Part 1. Deleted from payroll. It started with a 404 error. I'd been trying to access my employee portal from home. Just a routine thing. HR had sent out an email saying we could download our tax documents early this year. I'd clicked the link, typed in my credentials, hit enter, and got a message I'd never seen before. No user account found. Please contact your administrator. At first, I figured it was just a bug. Our internal systems weren't exactly state-of-the-art. I was the one who'd coded half the front-end interface back when I worked in IT for Ellison & Park. Scratch that. When I still worked for Ellison & Park, full-time. 5 years. I was logging in from home because I had the flu, but I wasn't off the clock. So I called IT. A woman I didn't know answered. "Hi," I said. "This is Nick Becker, employee 62412. I'm getting a credential error when I try to access the portal." Silence. Then, "Sorry, who did you say you were?" "Nick Becker. I work in data integrity under Janelle Tran." Another pause. "I'm sorry, there's no one by that name in the system. Are you sure you have the right company?" That stopped me cold. "Yes, I've worked here since 2018. I'm literally on the org chart under Janelle." I heard typing. "I have a Nathan Becker," she said, "but he's in contracting. Not full-time. Joined last week." "I'm not Nathan." "Okay, can you hold?" She never came back. After 10 minutes of silence, the line cut off. I tried again. New number, new extension. This time a man answered. When I explained what happened, he said, "That's not possible, sir. There's no Nick Becker in our system, past or present." I refreshed the login page. Still no access. My stomach tightened. I opened my email. My company email was gone. Not inactive, gone. Rejected as if it had never existed. I checked my backup, Gmail. Still there. Still had a folder of old messages, confirmations, HR memos, a Slack export, proof. I scrolled through it all, looking for Janelle's personal email. Found it. Typed fast. Subject, urgent. System error? "Hey Janelle, it's Nick. I tried logging into the portal and got locked out. HR says they have no record of me. Can you confirm I'm still on file on your end? This is freaking me out." I hit send. It bounced back. "Email address does not exist." I checked LinkedIn. Her profile, gone. I typed in mine, logged in. My profile had been edited. Still had my name. Still had my photo. But my employment history was blank. The Ellison & Park entry had vanished. Even my prior job, DataSec in Austin, gone. I checked my resume on Google Drive, still listed both companies. I clicked the link to my old manager's profile, 404. I checked the list of connections. Dozens of people I knew personally wiped. Then I checked my inbox. New message. From a private address, subject line, "Let it go." No body, no signature, just a PDF attachment. I opened it. It was my resume, updated. Only now it listed no jobs in the last 10 years. Just one line at the bottom. Availability, flexible, clean record, quiet exit history. What the hell did that mean? My phone rang, unknown number. I didn't answer. Voicemail popped up. I listened. It was a robotic voice. One I didn't recognize. "We're cleaning your path. Please don't interfere." Click. I stared at the wall for a long time. Then I packed a bag and went to my brother's house in Jersey. Didn't tell him why. Just said I needed a place to crash. That night, I checked my bank account. The last 5 years of direct deposits were gone. repulsed with new entries, all from a company I'd never heard of, Keylight Consulting Group. Payments were identical. Same dates, same dollar amounts, but no one at Ellison and Park. I Googled Keylight. Nothing, not even a website. I checked my tax records. Filed under a 1099 form from Keylight. Not W-2. No benefits, no health insurance. I'd been reclassified, but I didn't do it. I called my accountant. Told her I thought something was wrong. She pulled my last 3 years of filings. "Looks fine on my end," she said. "You've been contracting with Keylight since 2017, right?" I almost dropped the phone. "No," I said. "I've never even heard of Keylight until today. You're listed as a project consultant in their system, hourly. You even had a deduction for travel." "I never traveled for them." She paused. "I mean, I have the receipts, Nick." I told her I'd call back. I didn't. The next morning, I checked in with an old co-worker, Charlie. He and I used to eat lunch together twice a week, for years. I called from a burner app, just in case. "Hello? Charlie, it's me. Nick." A pause. "Nick who?" "Becker. We worked together at Ellison. You used to steal my Red Bulls." He chuckled politely. "I'm sorry, man. I think you have the wrong guy." No, Charlie, I've only been at Ellison for 6 months. That's not true." "You okay, dude?" The line clicked. I stared at the floor. It didn't make sense. I wasn't being erased. I was being replaced. New names in the files, new classifications, new memories in other people's heads, like my life was a piece of code being rewritten in real time. I had one option left. I drove to the building. Security didn't recognize me. Tried to scan in, badge didn't work. When I asked for Janelle, they said, "No such person on this floor." But her name was still on the door plaque. Only now it read, J. Tang, Director, Systems Acquisitions. Not Tran, different woman entirely. I left, went back to the car, found a note on my windshield. Folded once, handwritten. "Stop digging. You were never supposed to go this deep." I checked the security footage from my dash cam. Nothing. Black screen from 11:47 a.m. to 11:50 a.m. Someone had blanked the file. Just like the job. Just like me. And that's when I realized if someone could erase 5 years of employment, change the documents, reprogram the people, rewrite the money, then this wasn't just digital tampering. This was systemic, structured, and I wasn't the only one. Because when I got back to my brother's place, there was a message scrawled on the inside of the bathroom mirror, written in fog. "You remember, that makes you dangerous." Part 2, the contacts vanish. The fog on the bathroom mirror had already started to evaporate, but the message was still there. "You remember, that makes you dangerous." I didn't touch it, didn't wipe it, didn't even breathe on it. I just stood there for a long time, trying to figure out if someone had broken into my brother's house without tripping the alarm, or if this thing, this whatever it was, didn't need to use doors. By the time I walked out, the fog had vanished. The mirror was clean again, as if it had never happened. But I knew better now. I wasn't just being erased. I was being watched, and whoever was doing it had access to more than just HR files and tax forms. They could get into houses, into phones, into me. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and opened my laptop. First thing I checked was my Gmail. Empty. Not the inbox, the contacts. Every name, every email address, every phone number I'd ever stored was gone. 0 entries. Even the autofill suggestions had been wiped. My own name didn't autocomplete in the from field. I opened my phone, checked my messages. My entire texting history was still there, but the contact names were missing. All of them. Just numbers now. Some local, some unknown. I picked one at random. A number I recognized by memory. My friend Cassie. We hadn't talked much lately, but she was my emergency contact on all my forms. I called. It rang twice. Then a voice answered. Not hers. Male. Robotic. This user is no longer associated with your memory profile. Please update your contacts. Then it clicked. Not her memory. Mine. They were rewriting my recollection. My context. Every person I thought I knew, scrubbed from my mind's infrastructure. I scrolled through the texts, trying to find one Cassie had sent me last month. Found it. Screenshot of a meme. A short, lol, you'd totally say this. I tapped it. Corrupted. Unsupported image format. I opened her message thread. Empty. Except one line. We appreciate your silence. That did it. I grabbed my jacket and left. Didn't even tell my brother. Didn't want to get him involved. I had to know what was happening. Had to find someone who remembered me before I started working at Ellison. Before the scrub. Before the replacement. I drove to my old neighborhood in Queens. Took the same turn past the deli. Same shortcut near the park. Pulled into a driveway I hadn't used in years. Mrs. Rayner. She was my landlord for almost 5 years. Sweet old woman. Once baked me a pie when my mom died. I knocked on her door. It opened halfway. She peered out. Yes, it's Nick. Nick Becker. Nothing. I used to rent the basement apartment here, from 2012 to 2017. She frowned. I'm sorry, you must be thinking of someone else. I've never rented to a Nick. My heart sank. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through old photos, found one of me standing in front of her house on move-in day. I showed it to her. That's Photoshop, she said quietly, and shut the door. I stood there in the cold, phone still glowing in my hand. I felt like I was disappearing in real time. Back in the car, I opened a private browser and searched my own name. Nothing. No articles, no mentions, no accounts tied to employment. Only a generic results page, a few white pages hits, an obituary for someone else. I searched for my own social media profiles. 404. But when I searched Nick Becker plus Keylight Consulting, I found something. A login panel. No branding, just a gray box and 2 fields, email and passcode. I tried my usual credentials. They didn't work, but as I hovered, a tooltip appeared. Remember what you never typed. I froze. That was something I'd said once in a workshop, helping a junior dev write input validation rules. I tried a string of characters I hadn't used in years, an old test password. It worked. The dashboard loaded. Bare bones interface. 3 tabs. Projects, replacements, status. I clicked projects. Each entry was just a code, timestamp, and a result. Column. Most read. Integrated, identity reassigned. Some read. Incomplete, profile resistance detected. One was highlighted in red. NB 62412, active degradation. That was me. I clicked it. A timeline appeared. 2018, embedded at Ellison and Park. 2019, social vector stabilization. 2020, persona mesh approved. 2021, memory loop begins. 2022, identity erosion initiated. 2023, replacement accepted. 2024, observer drift. 2025, compromise status. Containment failed. Subject aware, begin fallback. There was a red button labeled override, silence, Manual. I didn't click it. I backed out, clicked the replacements tab. Faces filled the screen. My face, slightly altered, different smiles, slightly younger, some with beards, some without. Every version just different enough to avoid full recognition. Each labeled with a company and a location, each with a status. They'd replaced me everywhere I'd ever worked. Maybe even before I started working. Maybe I was never supposed to exist. I clicked status. Just one line. Primary subject, autonomous. Observation level, escalated. Directive, neutralize or assimilate before Q3. Then the page refreshed itself. Logged me out. When I tried to re-enter, I got a message. This login has been decommissioned. My phone buzzed. New number, no caller ID. I answered, hello? Silence. Then a whisper. You weren't supposed to remember, but since you do, what do you want to be this time? I hung up, tore the SIM card out, smashed the phone on the pavement. But deep down, I knew they didn't need my number. They already had my name. And soon, even that wouldn't belong to me. Part 3. Not in the system. I needed proof. Not screenshots, not memories. Real, tangible, undeniable proof that I existed. That I had a history. That someone, anyone, could validate me as a real person. I started with the DMV. My wallet still held a driver's license. Real plastic, real photo, valid expiration date. I drove to the Manhattan office and waited in line for 40 minutes. When I reached the counter, the woman behind the glass didn't look up as she asked for my ID. I slid it under the slot. She scanned it, then frowned. System's not finding you. Try it again, I said, heart already thudding. She did, twice. Sir, this ID is formatted correctly, but there's no record attached to the number. Where did you get this? I've had that license for 10 years. She raised an eyebrow. There's no license registered under your name. No photo, no record. Check my social security number, I said, louder than I intended. She hesitated, then took the number, typed, waited, then looked up at me. Her eyes different now, not confused, concerned. I'm going to need you to take a seat. Why? I'm calling someone from the back. No, don't. But she was already picking up the phone. I turned and walked fast, not quite running, but close. Through the lobby, out the door, down the sidewalk. No one called after me. No one stopped me, but I felt watched all the way to the car. Next stop, the IRS. I had a physical copy of my tax return from last year. Printed, stamped, signed. I went to the federal building and asked to speak with a tax officer about a correction. They gave me a waiting room. 30 minutes later, a man in a gray suit called my name. We sat down in a cubicle with partition walls and nothing on the desk but a monitor and a keyboard. I need to verify some employment records, I said, from Ellison and Park and a company called Keylight Consulting. He nodded, asked for my ID and SSN. I handed them over. He typed, then stopped, tilted his head. That's strange. What? I asked. He turned the screen toward me. It was blank. No entries. Not even errors. Your taxpayer ID is valid, he said slowly. But there's no file attached to it. No filings, no refunds, no W-2s, nothing. I showed him my printed form. He took it, examined the stamp, then asked, "Where did you get this?" "You're looking at it." He didn't smile. "This stamp isn't real." "What are you talking about?" "It's close," he said. "Looks federal, but the font is off. And this emblem," he pointed, This hasn't been used since 1996. I blinked. I printed that off TurboTax. I'll need to keep this, he said, standing. No. I'm required to. I snatched it off the table and walked out. He didn't follow. At this point, I was desperate. I called my college, told them I needed a replacement diploma. The woman on the phone was polite until she asked for my name. Then she paused. Becker, Nick Becker, yes. I'm sorry, I don't show any records under that name. I graduated class of 2011, Business Information Systems, summa cum laude. I have a Nicole Becker, graduated 2010, Biology. I'm not Nicole. Then I'm sorry, sir, you'll have to contact admissions. I did. Same result. No record. I dug out the yearbook from my brother's basement, flipped to the back section. My photo was gone. Literally gone. The others were intact, alphabetical order. One blank space where I should have been. Page number intact, name removed. As if I'd been cut out physically, not just digitally. I slammed the book shut. My hands were shaking. I didn't just want to scream. I wanted to shatter. Instead, I went to the only place left I could think of. The hospital where I was born. I had to know. Maybe this all started earlier than I thought. Maybe I was never in the system to begin with. I walked up to the records desk and gave them my date of birth. September 2nd, 1989. Mother's name? The woman asked. Carla Becker. She typed. Then frowned. We have a Carla Becker. Gave birth here that year. She looked up, but the baby was stillborn. The world tilted sideways. No, I said. No, I'm him. I'm Nick. I was born here. She hesitated, then typed again. Only other Nicholas Becker in our records was born in 1972. Not your age. She turned the screen. The record was clear. Name, Becker Nicholas. Born. Deceased. Non-viable at birth. I backed away, out of the building. Sat on the curb with my head in my hands. Was I even alive? Was I ever? Or was I just a placeholder? A profile. A fabrication with paperwork, no longer supported by the system. That night I checked into the cheapest motel I could find. Cash only. Used a fake name. Didn't sleep. At 2:46 a.m., there was a knock on the door. Soft, polite, 3 slow taps. I froze, waited. Another knock. This time a voice. Male, warm. We don't want to hurt you, Nick. We just want you to stop. I didn't move. The peephole was covered. I heard something slide under the door. I waited until I was sure they were gone, then crept forward and picked it up. It was a photograph, a printed screenshot, a company website. Ellison and Park, careers page, under Meet Our Team. A photo grid of smiling faces. One of them was me. Same face, same eyes, different name. Ethan Price, Director, Systems Coordination. I turned the photo over, written in Sharpie. You still exist. You're just not you anymore. And underneath that, assignment begins Monday. We look forward to working with you again. Part 4, wrong name. I couldn't stop staring at the name on the back of the photograph. Ethan Price. It looked nothing like me. Not the name, anyway. Too polished, too curated. But the face, that was mine. Not someone who looked like me, not a distant cousin or AI-generated copy. Me. Even the scar on my left cheek from a bike crash when I was 12. It was there. Same slope to the shoulders. Same squint in one eye when he smiled. only he was smiling too confidently, like he'd earned a life I hadn't lived. I didn't sleep, just sat on the edge of the motel bed, rereading the note under the name. Assignment begins Monday. That was in 4 days. Somehow, this new version of me was already working, already integrated, already wearing my face and shaking hands in the same building I'd been erased from. I needed to see it, to see him. On Monday morning, I walked into Ellison and Park at just after 9 a.m., dressed in business casual, glasses on, hair brushed down. I looked like I belonged. Security didn't blink. I rode the elevator to floor 17, my old floor, and stepped into the lobby like I was returning from a smoke break. And there he was, across the office, surrounded by a small group of employees, laughing, shaking hands, wearing my exact blue button-up, the one I'd thought I lost a year ago. He turned, met my eyes, paused, just for a second, and smiled. But not in surprise, not in confusion, in recognition and acknowledgement, like two colleagues who worked different shifts and only ever crossed paths once. I turned and walked back into the elevator, wrote it down, exited the building, vomited into a trash can on the corner. I couldn't breathe, not because I was scared, because something inside me had reacted to him, something old, something buried, something that whispered, "You know him," not like a stranger, like a twin who never left the womb. That night, I booked a co-working cubicle under a fake name and pulled out everything I had. Photos, printouts, archives. I cross-referenced Ethan Price's digital footprint. It was sparse. LinkedIn, active only since 2022. No university listed. No employment before Ellison. No social media. Just a single quote on his profile. Not everything that vanishes is lost. I Googled it. Nothing. Not a poem. Not a movie quote. Not a song lyric. Original or internal? Then I dug deeper. Used some backdoor credentials I still remembered from a freelance job I'd done for a reputation cleansing firm 5 years ago. Logged into a private crawler, ran Ethan Price through a meta crawler. It pulled one hit, an invite-only personnel registry. Not public, not government, just a number, RP number 13472 core, Ethan Price, aka NB62412. Class, Layer 2, Interface Replacement. Assignment, Stabilize Vector prior to expansion. I stared at the AKA line for a long time. NB62412. That was me. That was my employee number. My login at Ellison. My badge ID. And next to it, obsolete. I hadn't just been replaced. I'd been deprecated. Outdated code. Something they were phasing out, slowly, cleanly, without notice. And now, my replacement was live, smiling, thriving, living the career I'd built. The next morning, I drove to the old storage unit I'd kept in Long Island. I hadn't opened it in 2 years. Inside were a few old hard drives, some printed portfolios, and a shoebox full of photo IDs, conference passes, old company badges, even a university alumni card. I laid them out across the metal table, and I saw it. Every single ID now had the name Ethan Price, not Nick Becker. Same face, same barcode, wrong name. I grabbed my old passport, expired last year, flipped it open. Ethan Price. I sat down, hard. My stomach turned. I pulled out my college diploma from the plastic tube I'd saved it in. Ethan Price. It wasn't just public records anymore. It was physical, historical, documented. Whatever was rewriting me wasn't doing it through the cloud. It was reaching into matter. Into paper, plastic, ink. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text only. You're almost ready. I didn't respond, didn't need to. A second text arrived. We need you back in the interface. Integration is incomplete without the seed. What seed? Who's we? Then I remembered the dashboard, the one I'd found in the Keylight portal, where my status had been listed as autonomous, compromised. I wasn't terminated. I was rogue, a shard, a leftover version that had survived the rewrite, and now they wanted me back, not because they missed me, because they needed to complete the program. I had a choice, be overwritten or finish what they started. That night, I stood outside Ellison and Park again. Same lobby, same revolving doors. I watched from across the street until the lights began to dim inside. And then, just before 10 p.m., he walked out. Ethan, me, wearing a dark coat, holding a phone, looking relaxed. I followed him. Half a block behind, he walked 2 blocks, turned into a cafe, sat by the window, ordered tea, read something on his phone, smiled at the barista, and then, without turning, he said, "You're getting closer, Nick." I froze. He still didn't look at me, just sipped his tea, then said, "But you won't find what you're looking for out here." Then he stood, dropped a 20 on the table, walked past me without even a glance, and as he passed, I felt it. A flicker, a momentary shift, like a hard drive catching a glitch, a low-frequency buzz in the space between thoughts. He wasn't just replacing me, he was carrying me, like code in a container, like the original OS running under a new shell. Some part of me was still alive, and if I could reach it, I might still have a chance, because I wasn't the wrong name. I was the first one, the seed, the reason they had to rewrite everything in the first place. And maybe, just maybe, I could corrupt the system from within. Part 5, the interim. I didn't go back to the motel that night. I drove until the buildings thinned out, until the streetlights gave way to long shadows, and the road began to look like memory instead of pavement. I found a cheap hotel just outside the city. Paid cash, no ID. As I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, Ethan's words echoed in my head. "You won't find what you're looking for out here." He was right. Whatever was happening, the deletions, the replacements, the rewritten identities, it wasn't just being done to me. It was being done through me. And now I'd come far enough that the system was watching again, actively, responding. I was close to something. The only question was what? The next morning, I received an email on a burner address I hadn't used in years, an inbox I only checked out of paranoia. Subject, "You're not alone." No signature, just an address and a time. West Side Storage, Unit 12C, 3 p.m. I almost deleted it, but something stopped me. I went. The facility was tucked beneath an overpass, surrounded by rusting fencing and billboards that hadn't been updated since the pandemic. The woman behind the counter didn't even ask for my name, just handed me a key when I said 12C. Inside the unit, there were 2 folding chairs, a card table, and a man in a navy hoodie with his back to me. He didn't turn when I entered. "You're early," he said. "You're real?" I asked. He chuckled. Depends how you define real these days. I stayed near the door. Who are you? He turned, mid-40s, shaved head, scar across his left temple. People call me Garrick, he said, but the system used to call me KS9080. You were part of it? I was inside it, he said. Like you. I'm not anymore, he interrupted, but you were. Long enough for it to keep your pattern. Long enough for it to want you back. I stepped closer. You're saying I worked for them? He shook his head. No, you were them. I didn't understand. He pulled out a laptop, turned it toward me. On the screen was a diagram, a circle with 4 nodes labeled seed, host, interim, replacement. This is how it works, he said. The system scans for stable cognitive patterns, high compliance, low resistance, minimal external imprinting. When it finds one, it seeds that personality into low-level assignments, test environments, real jobs, real timelines, but observed. Observed by who? By the interim. You tapped the second node. The interim is what you became when you deviated. I stared at the diagram. You mean I was a test pattern? A perfect one, until you started remembering. He leaned forward. That's why they sent Ethan, the replacement. He nodded. They don't delete you, Nick. They overwrite, but only after confirming the seed won't reassert. I felt cold. So why am I still here? He smiled. That's the question, isn't it? Garrick explained everything. Keylight wasn't a company, it was a protocol. A kind of AI-driven identity automation system built to stabilize large-scale employment networks. When corporations needed perfect employees, compliant, quiet, efficient, the protocol inserted seeded identities, ran them for 3 to 7 years, then recycled them. Sometimes the seed would reassert, reconnect to memory, build relationships, develop will. When that happened, the system would deploy an interim phase. Deletion of history, contact scrubbing, personal destabilization. Most seeds fractured, broke. I hadn't. Why not me? I asked. He shrugged. Some code resists. You're one of the few who lasted this long without full overwrite. He handed me a flash drive. What's this? Proof. A copy of your seed file, before they started edits. I plugged it into the laptop. It opened a folder labeled NB62412, interim log. Inside were hundreds of entries. Documents, audio files, session notes, digital memos marked observation, drift detected. The first entry was from 2017. My first day at Ellison. Audio recording. Subject engaged. Responds well to low stimulus environments. Strong logical patterning. Believes origin story. Embedding successful. My voice, faint in the background. Happy to be here. Just want to do a good job. I closed the file. My skin crawled. I'd been recorded from day 1. Why are you helping me? I asked Garrick. Because I was like you, he said, and someone helped me once. What happened to them? He looked down. They didn't make it to extraction. I stared at the screen again. One file was labeled, Warning, Subject attempting to access seed archive. Initiate fallback. Time-stamped 2 nights ago, when I broke into the system. They noticed, Garrick finished, which means you don't have long. What do I do? He handed me a small card. Black, no writing. Take this to Terminal 4, lower access bay, back hallway behind Gate C. Show it to the man sweeping the floor. He'll tell you what comes next. Who is he? Same as me, Garrick said. Ghost in the code. That night I did as he said. Went to the airport, found the hallway, A janitor in a faded vest was sweeping. I handed him the card. He didn't speak, just walked to the wall, pressed a hidden panel, and a section of the wall slid open. Inside, a narrow corridor lit by red LEDs. He nodded once. I walked in. The panel closed behind me. At the end of the corridor, a door, a terminal, a screen already active. Text waiting. Hello, Nick. Or would you prefer NB62412? I typed. I want to know what I am. Response. You are the prototype, the only seed to self-stabilize without recursion. You mean I survived the overwrite? You resisted it. That makes you interim. What does that mean? It means you're still part of us, and you always will be, unless you complete your reintegration. What happens if I don't? Then you fracture, and everything built from your pattern fractures with you. A pause, then a new prompt. Begin merge. I didn't press anything. Not yet, because I wasn't sure if becoming whole again meant being me or becoming them. And the only thing scarier than being erased was choosing to disappear on purpose. Part 6. The Vault. I sat there staring at the blinking cursor after the prompt. Begin merge? Yes, as if one keystroke could pull me back into something I never asked to be part of. After a full minute, the screen went dark. Then a new line appeared. Delay logged. Interim instability increasing. You know where to go. The screen shut off. A soft click behind me. The wall panel opening. I walked out, heart hammering. The janitor was gone. So was the hallway. Now I was back in the main corridor of Terminal 4. The airport bustled around me like none of that had ever happened. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe none of this was happening the way I thought it was. But I knew one thing for sure now. The system didn't want to delete me. It wanted me whole, merged, and I couldn't let that happen. Not until I knew what they'd used me to build. I called Garrick the next day, told him about the merge prompt. He didn't sound surprised. That means they're close, he said. They're trying to trick you into handing yourself back over. They don't pull out the merge until they know extraction risk is high. Then what do I do? You pull the plug from the inside. He paused. You go into the vault. I remembered that term from the earlier dashboard, buried in the metadata of the replacement files. Vault, core, pathway. What's in there? Source code, Garrick said. Pattern libraries. The full behavioral archive. Everyone they've ever overwritten. Can I access it? He hesitated. Not officially, but you have a key. What key? You. Later that night, Garrick brought me to a warehouse in Brooklyn. It looked abandoned, but inside was a steel door with a biometric panel. He scanned his palm. The door opened. Inside was a dark room with a single server rack. Cables spilled like roots across the floor. The walls were covered in insulation and faded schematics. This was no ordinary network hub. It was offline. Welcome to the vault, Garrick said. I stepped in. The temperature dropped. The hum of the server was low and rhythmic, like a heartbeat too slow to be human. He handed me a wired headset. You'll need to jack in. Seriously? It's not as cinematic as it sounds, he said. The headset just feeds your memory pattern back through the archive layer. If you're who they say you are, the system will open. And if I'm not? It'll collapse you. He didn't elaborate. I sat down in the chair, put the headset on. Garrick flipped a switch. A tone filled my skull. like a modem scream and a choir whispering in reverse at the same time. Then blackness, then light, then a hallway. White walls, no shadows, just space. I walked. The hallway curved as if I were inside a spiral. Along the walls, windows. Each window showed a different life, different jobs, different versions of me. In one, I was a teacher. In another, a nurse. In another, homeless, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Not broken, just unwritten." I stopped at that one. The version of me in the glass looked back, then smiled. The wall flickered. A voice spoke, familiar, synthetic. "Hello, Nick. Welcome home." I turned, no one there, only a console floating in the air. A single field on the screen. Enter identity code. I typed my old employee ID, NB62412. The world shuddered. A door opened. Beyond it, rows and rows of digital files, floating like memory fragments. I reached for one, touched it. Instant download. A flood of images, sounds, and voices. My first week at Ellison, recorded from 12 angles. A lunch break with Janelle, tagged rapport pattern forming. Me crying in a bathroom, labeled emotional instability, scheduled for correction. They'd seen everything and cataloged it, modified it, tested me like a rat in a labyrinth of spreadsheets. One file stood out, gold highlighted, NB62412 interim override. I opened it. Inside, a full breakdown of my replacement, his code, his launch parameters, his deployment scripts, and a timeline. At the bottom, final merge, 3 days. My heart stuttered. They were going to finish this, wipe me, finalize Ethan, and close the loop. But below the merge date was a button, Interrupt Integrity. I clicked it. The screen froze. Then, "Are you sure?" I hesitated. If I pressed it, I might bring down the entire identity net, or just myself. I clicked yes. The vault groaned. Lights flickered. The hallway walls cracked like digital glass. The file windows imploded. And I heard a voice scream in the distance. Mine, but not mine. Then everything went black. I woke on the warehouse floor. The server was dark. Smoke coiled from one of the towers. Garrick was gone. Only a note remained, taped to my chest. "They'll come for you now, but you've already taken something they can't get back." I staggered outside. Night had fallen. The city looked dimmer, as if someone had turned the brightness down on reality. When I got back to the motel, the TV was on, flickering static, and a message in the middle. NB62412, vault corrupted, reclone initiated. But now, neither was I. They'd tried to bury me under versions of myself, but I'd found the original. And if I could still remember it, I could rewrite them before they rewrote me again. Part 7, The New Candidate. I spent the next 2 days on the move. No cards, no phones, no networks. Every time I stopped in one place too long, I'd see signs, subtle at first. A bus ad with a man that looked too much like me. A store receipt where the name on the card had changed to Ethan P. A stranger on the street nodding like we'd met. And sometimes I caught glimpses, reflections in windows that didn't match my movements. A delay in the mirror, like something was catching up or slipping behind. I knew what that meant. They'd launched a new candidate, a replacement for my replacement. It happened on a Thursday, 3:14 a.m. The power in my motel room flickered. TV turned itself on. No input, just static. Then a video started to play. Surveillance footage, low res, wide angle, an office conference room. Ellison and Park. Ethan sat at the head of the table. He looked older, tired, like the smile no longer fit the face. Across from him sat a man I didn't recognize, or maybe I almost did. Same build, same posture, but cleaner, sharper, younger. The caption under the footage: Evaluation, Candidate Zeta 3, successor to NB 62412 and EP1. Me, then Ethan, now this. I watched as they shook hands, as Ethan stood, as he walked out of frame, slowly, shoulders hunched. A new life handed off like a uniform. A file appeared on screen. Zeta 3 preliminary profile. Identity confidence, 98.4%. Memory fusion, pending. Resistance forecast, 0.03%. Public acceptance. Optimal. Then the screen flashed red. Unresolved identity located, NB 62412, interim, still active. A pause. Reclone locked. Merge required. I stood, backed away. Whatever they were building, it wasn't just meant to replace me. It was meant to evolve from me. And they couldn't finish until I was either assimilated or deleted. I went to Garrick, or tried to. His safe house had been burned out. Literally, the interior was scorched, electronics fused, the walls covered in smoke. But the back room had one thing left, a Polaroid taped to the wall, of me, standing on a sidewalk, yesterday, drinking coffee. Below it, someone had written, "Last trace, no backup. You're the only thread left." I sat on the floor, staring at that photo. And then I understood. I wasn't being hunted because I was dangerous. I was being hunted because I was original. Every new version was a degradation, a safer, smoother, more predictable shell. But I was noise, glitch, disruption. And somewhere in the system, that terrified them. I found a dead drop server in Queens, a literal underground LAN node used by whistleblowers, conspiracy groups, and black hat historians. There, I pulled up the encrypted archives Garrick had given me, and I found the file, Zeta 3 seed template. Inside, personality model, behavior predictions, deployment routes, memory injection plans, and one final detail. Core pattern source, NB 62412, legacy stream. They were still using me, still cloning from the original code. I hadn't just been the first, I was the root, and that meant I still had access. Somewhere inside the code, a failsafe had to exist, a way to shut it down. If not by force, then by contradiction, by feeding it a memory that didn't match, a truth too solid to rewrite. I went to the last place I knew was still real. My childhood home. It had been sold years ago. A young family lived there now. I didn't knock. I just sat on the curb across the street and watched it as the sun set. And I remembered the blue bicycle with one training wheel, the burnt toast smell on Sunday mornings, the crack in the upstairs window that looked like a spider web, and one moment, my father kneeling to look me in the eye, saying, "Never let someone tell you who you are. They don't get to decide." That memory hit me like thunder, because it wasn't just a feeling. It was a fact, untouched, uncoded, raw, and I realized that was it, the failsafe, the thing the system couldn't replicate. Unstructured memory, human emotion layered in time, not in data. I recorded myself speaking it, spoke every detail out loud, tied it to the archive node Garrick had left behind, injected it into their upstream, and waited. It didn't take long. That night, the system answered. A message on every screen in the motel, even the alarm clock. Error. Source contaminated. Core model divergent. Purge incomplete. Then, Zeta 3 rejected. Pattern loop unstable. And finally, primary subject NB62412 required for structural integrity. Reactivation initiated. They couldn't replace me because I wasn't just a profile. I was the origin, the chaos before order, the truth beneath the simulation. They needed me, but now I didn't need them. And when the replacement came, when Zeta 3 knocked on the door and looked at me through my own face and said, "We can end this. You don't have to run," I smiled, because I wasn't going to run anymore. I was going to erase them from the inside. Starting now. Part 8. Decommissioned. I didn't sleep before the end, not because I was afraid, but because I finally understood what I was, what they'd made me into, what I had always been. Not a person, not an employee, not a malfunction, a key. The only one that still fit the original lock. And that meant I could turn it from the inside. The morning after Zeta 3 came to my door, I made my way to a building I'd passed 1,000 times during my years at Ellison and Park. One of those windowless monoliths that looks like it belongs to no one. No logo, no signage. Just a metal security panel and an always empty lot. But I knew what it was now. It wasn't corporate, it was central. A relay station. A physical access point to the distributed vault, the one I'd seen only fragments of in Brooklyn. This was the backbone, the last real node still tethered to the original stream, the one seated with me. I pressed my palm against the glass panel. It flashed red, then green. Access granted, NB62412. Decommissioned active override. The door clicked open. Inside, cold air and silence. Concrete floor, steel walls. A staircase that spiraled down into darkness. No guards, no cameras. They didn't need them anymore. They were confident I'd come here to finish the merge. They didn't know I'd come to end it. At the bottom, a single room. Server columns encased in glass, like museum exhibits. Lights blinking in patterns too fast for human comprehension. A single console waited for me in the center. Already active. Already logged in. Text on screen. "Welcome back, Nick." I typed, "This ends now." Response. "You are part of us. There is no you without us." That's where you're wrong. I plugged in the flash drive I'd kept in my sock. The one with the corrupted memory stream I'd recorded outside my childhood home. It uploaded instantly, and with it, I injected contradiction. The one thing the system couldn't process. A memory with no anchor. Not captured, not recorded, not synthesized, just lived. Me and my dad. A moment no one else could fake. A moment that was mine. The screen flickered. Error. Non-standard memory protocol. Unindexed pattern. Recursive loop detected. Then, warning. Primary model no longer centered. NB62412 exceeding boundaries. Interface instability critical. I kept typing. Every real thing I could remember. The taste of cheap coffee on my first day of work. The exact way Janelle's voice cracked when she laughed. The time I fell asleep on the bus and missed my stop. The panic, the rush, the reality. I typed until the keys blurred, until the server lights slowed, until the room began to buzz, not mechanically, but vibrationally, like a tension finally coming undone. Then the screen went white. One final line. Decommission initiated. The power shut off. The servers powered down. The door behind me opened on its own. I walked back into the world. Not as Nick Becker. Not as NB62412. Just me. No badges, no monitors, no mirrored faces waiting to overwrite me. Just a quiet street and the sound of my own footsteps. Later, I checked. Ellison and Park, still there. But Ethan Price, gone. Zeta 3, never launched. Garrick's name, still erased. But I remembered. That was enough. Keylight, nothing. Just a dead link. No history, no metadata. Like the whole operation folded in on itself when I collapsed the root. When I collapsed and reassembled. I don't know how long it will stay this way. Maybe forever. Maybe a week. But I keep a note by my bed now, just in case I forget. It says, "You are real. You were first. And no one gets to rewrite that." I don't look in the mirror for too long anymore. Just enough. Just to make sure it's still me. Because for the first time in a long time, it actually is.